Secretary Philip Hammond, who joins us from Westminster. Good morning to you, Mr Hammond. The report seems to assume that the UK deal would be similar to some of the other nations that are mentioned in there. But the UK is the second largest economy in Europe, fifth largest in the world. Are you not confident that you could negotiate a better deal for the UK?
Well, first of all, this is a document that we're mandated by law to produce, setting out what some of the alternatives might look like. But it's really for those who are advocating Britain leaving the EU to set out what kind of relationship they expect Britain to have with the EU and indeed with other trading partners if we left the European Union. And then people in this country can look at what they're suggesting, proposing, and make up their own minds as to whether it's credible. What we've done is taken some of the existing models, the relationship that the EU has with Norway, with Turkey, with Switzerland, with Canada, and set out the pros and cons of them. And of course, it would be possible to start from scratch, not to use one of the existing established models, to negotiate a set of trade agreements from scratch. But all the evidence shows that that will take a very long time, many years. And in the meantime, British business, British consumers, British growth and British jobs will be left in limbo.
You mentioned Norway, but Norway's economy is the 27th largest in the world. And that's why, with you painting the worst case scenario, people are saying this is Project Fear, and Ian Duncan-Smith and others are saying it's a dodgy dossier. How do you answer that?
Well, I answer it by asking them to present their own dossier. Tell us what the model is that they believe the European Union would negotiate with Britain. Remember, this is going to be a divorce if we decide to leave, and as with any divorce, it's likely to get messy. It'll take a long time to sort out the disentanglement of our affairs, and then we want to start renegotiating some kind of relationship with the EU going forward. And the fact is, as this document shows today, in every deal that the European Union has made with a non-EU European country, that country has been obliged to make contributions to the EU budget and has been obliged to accept freedom of movement of workers from the EU, migrants from the EU. And if the Leave campaign says that its principal objective is to stop British contributions to the EU budget and to stop freedom of movement for EU migrants into the UK, then they've got to present a credible model of what they think they would be able to negotiate with the EU by way of a free trade agreement to protect our businesses, to protect our jobs, without agreeing to those conditions that the EU has clearly imposed in all the other cases.
OK, we'll put that to Dominic Raab in a moment, but you say it would be a messy divorce. The Conservative Party seems to be a bit messy at the moment. I mean, you've got the former Tory Chancellor, Norman Lamont, saying this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to leave. Deep divisions in the party, a very public split. Once the referendum is finished, how can David Cameron have a mandate to lead the party forward when there are so many opinions in there?
Well, we know that there are different opinions within the Conservative Party. It surprises me not one jot that Norman Lamont has come out for leave. He's always been passionately hostile to the European Union. But what we share is stronger than what divides us. So we share an understanding in the need for financial discipline, strong government of this country. We share an admiration for the way that this government has turned around the economy and got Britain growing again, created more jobs in the UK over the last 5 years than in the rest of Europe put together. And we know that the job that we've been elected to do is to run the country effectively, manage the economy and complete the delivery of our long-term economic plan. And we'll all pull together to do that once the referendum campaign is over.
I appreciate your time this morning. That's Philip Hammond.
Thank you.
Well, listening to that is Conservative MP Dominic Raab, who is part of the Vote Leave campaign. Morning to you. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's pick up some of those thoughts. I'm sure you heard Philip Hammond then. What is the model then? How would you negotiate, and what is it that you want to get?
Well, I have to say, good morning. First of all, it's like Halloween come early with all these scare stories. But let's answer the point directly. If you look at the various options for a free trade arrangement with the EU, some not even considered in this dossier, you have the Swiss model, the Norwegian model, the Turkish model. Britain's economy is bigger than all of those countries I've just mentioned combined. We have the fifth biggest economy in the world. We have European firms selling us £59 billion worth more of goods and services every year. So we are well placed to negotiate a deal which is bespoke for and best for Britain. And we're very confident we can do that. Is it really going to be the case that German car manufacturers or French pharmaceutical firms would erect massive trade barriers that would effectively cut their nose to spite their face? I don't think that's serious. And by the way, in the In campaign, the Prime Minister, former ambassador to the EU, the CBI, concede that we would continue to trade. The advantage from doing that outside of the EU is we have a strong trading relationship, but we can also deal with things like energy bills, the cost of food, and we can have freer trade with other parts of the world, which are the growth areas from Latin America to Asia, which is good for jobs. That is the positive world of brighter global opportunities if we stay firm trading partners with the EU, but we do it from outside of the political union.
How can you be sure that they won't erect trade barriers?
Because they sell us £59 billion more each year in goods and services than we do, and it will be contrary to their own interests. But let me just consider for a moment the alternative, that they defy their own commercial interest, erect these massive trade barriers, and engage in an utterly vindictive and spiteful way. Is that really a serious argument for staying within the EU?
OK, all the other places you've talked about, that have different kind of deals, they have other conditions. So you're just saying that you will be able to negotiate, that you won't have any other conditions?
Well, I think the basis will be free trade, but also democratic control over our laws. So that would include control over our borders, and there would be haggling over the detail of it. The point I'm making is it's crystal clear on the basis of mutual economic self-interest that we would continue to trade. And I think that the doomsday scenario being painted by the Out campaign is not really very credible. And by the way, I've given you example from the Prime Minister to the CBI of people on the In campaign who agree we would retain an ambitious free trade relationship with the EU from the outside. So let's get down to talking about the substance and not have so much of the, frankly, ridiculous scaremongering that's been going on.
Let's talk about substance then. We know that negotiations with the EU, because we've seen it work in practice, take years. How would you protect British business in the meantime, in that limbo kind of period that Philip Hammond was talking about?
Well, the only country that's withdrawn from the EU is Greenland, a country with an economy fraction of the size of Britain's. And they had a very complicated renegotiation from outside because of fisheries policy, which, as you can probably imagine, is almost inherently complex. That still only took them 2 years. So the idea that this will drag on indefinitely, causing huge damage to British business, is defied by the EU's own experience. And of course, we're a much larger economy, and it is much more in the interest of German car manufacturers, French pharmaceutical firms, all the other European exporters to actually get this resolved. So it would be a separation of sorts, but actually it would be a very amiable one, and it would free us up to have these more global opportunities to trade more widely, cut energy bills for homes, cut food prices for families, deal with the cost of living, and also take back control over our own laws.
Dominic Raab, thanks for your time this morning.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.